Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're making Chile Colorado. To start this dish we need some dried chilies, so I have 8 Guajillo chilies, 2 Ancho chilies, and 4 Arbol chilies. And we want the texture of these to be almost raisin-like. We don't want them to be that super dry, dehydrated chili because this is going to add so much more flavor. Now we need to remove the stems and de-seed these because all the heat lives in the seeds and the ribs of chilies. This is a Guajillo. It's not very spicy, but it adds such a beautiful, rich depth of flavor to your dish. So just remove all those seeds and then pop this into a medium-sized saucepan. Next up is our Arbol, and these are a little spicier than the Guajillos, but they're not as spicy as, say, a habanero, and there's almost a nuttiness to these. Last but not least, we have our Ancho chilies, another mildly spicy pepper, and these provide almost a fruit note, and they add another beautiful layer of flavor. Once all our chilies are in our pot, we are going to add 1 small onion, and I'm just chopping off both ends, splitting this in half, and removing that onion skin. And we don't have to do a fine dice on this because we are going to steep all of these and then puree them so you can give them a nice chunky choppity chop. And then just add them in the pot with our chilies. Now we're going to cover this with 1 cup of low sodium beef broth, as well as 2.5 cups of water. We just need enough liquid to submerge all these ingredients and make sure everything is covered so that they can steep kind of like a chili tea. Now that everything's in the pot, we can move over to the stove. Over medium-high heat, we're going to bring this whole mixture up to a boil. And once it reaches the boil, we're going to shut off the heat, cover this with a lid, and let it steep for 20 minutes. Now moving over to our protein, you can use whatever protein appeals to you. I am using some stew beef here. You could substitute this with pork. You could do a whole chuck roast and break it down. It's completely up to you and what you have on hand. I'm cutting this into roughly 1/2-inch pieces and removing any silver skin that I'm finding or excess fat. Once everything's cut up, we're putting this in a large bowl. We're going to season with 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/2 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, and 2 tablespoons of flour. The flour is going to help thicken our sauce as it reduces. We're going to give this a really good mix to make sure all of our protein is coated. And then we're going to set this aside and let this rest until we're ready to use it. Now that our chilies have rehydrated a little bit, we're going to take it out of our water, and you can use a food processor or a blender, whatever is most convenient to you, and we're going to pop in all the onions and chili into our vessel of choice. We're also going to add roughly 1 1/4 of a cup of our chili water. There's a lot of flavor in there that's also going to help get that puree started. We're going to season with 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, if you can find Mexican oregano, even better, and 4 cloves of garlic. And we're going to puree this until we get a nice, even, smooth puree. And look at this gorgeous brick red color. My hair used to be that color. But I digress. So we're just going to transfer this over to a bowl until we're ready to use it. I'm giving this a little taste, and the complexity of this chili, onion, garlic is just mind-blowing. Now moving over to the stove in a large Dutch oven or any heavy bottom pot that you have, adding 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and we're going to brown our protein in batches. We've talked about this before. We don't want our meat to steam. We want it to get this lovely Maillard effect and brown it on all sides. This is not going to cook this all the way through, but that's okay because we are going to cook this low and slow. But after the second batch is done, you can see all that gorgeous fond on the bottom of our pot, and we're going to address this in the next step. So remove all the beef, put it aside in a bowl, And we're going to add 3 cups of low sodium beef broth and start scraping up all of that gorgeous flavor that's stuck to the bottom. Just go in there and give your arm a good workout and scrape up all those lovely little brown bits. And they're going to melt into the broth. Once all the fond is scraped up, we're going to add our beef back in. We're going to introduce our chili puree to the party. And then we're going to add 2 bay leaves and a large stem of thyme. Mix this all together until everything is well incorporated, and we're going to bring this up to a boil. Once it reaches a boil, we're going to lower the heat to medium-low. And we're going to cover this up and we're going to let this cook for 45 minutes. So after 45 minutes, we can remove the lid and look at this bubbly cauldron of goodness. Give this a little stir. And we're going to taste for seasoning. So I'm going to add a healthy pinch of kosher salts and a little freshly ground black pepper. And we're going to raise our heat to medium. We're going to leave the lid off and cook this for an additional 30 minutes so this sauce can reduce down and intensify in flavor. And after 30 minutes, you'll notice your sauce has darkened considerably and is reduced down to a nice, beautiful thickness. Now to plate. Grab your favorite bowl, add as much Chile Colorado as your heart desires. We're going to squeeze a little lime over it. I have this great Spanish bodega a block away from me, and I get fresh handmade tortillas there, as well as this gorgeous Mexican sour cream, which is creamier than American sour cream. It's not as tart or tangy, and it adds such a beautiful richness to this dish. Then we're going to garnish with a little cilantro, not just for the flavor, but also for that beautiful, bright, vibrant green color. Now let's give this a taste. I'm going to use that aforementioned tortilla I talked about. There are so many complex flavors in this beautiful sauce. You get fruitiness, you get spiciness, like mild spiciness, you get this peppery, savory, I don't really have the words to explain how wonderful this is. That beef is super soft, it's stewed down beautifully. And this is just chilies and protein and a couple aromatics. But there it is, Chile Colorado. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a like. If you loved it, subscribe and hit that notification bell because I put out new videos every Thursday. Thank you again, and until next time, happy cooking. Okay, one thing that you have to remember is after you do this whole thing with the peppers, don't rub your eyes.